I overheard my mom call me dumb. Then they threw my sister's engagement party at my house. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Hannah, and for the past 2 years I've been living with my parents while I work 2 jobs to chip away at my student debt. I don't exactly love being here, but rent anywhere else is too much, and honestly I figured helping out around the house would make things easier for everyone. That was my mistake. My sister Emily is the star of the family. She's always been the golden child, pretty, polished, the type of person my parents brag about to their friends. She landed a good job straight out of college, started dating a wealthy guy named Ryan, and now she's engaged. Meanwhile, I'm just the sister who still hasn't figured it out. One night I was walking down the hallway when I heard my mom's voice through the cracked door of the living room. "Emily has always been the smart one," she said, her tone full of pride. My dad chuckled and replied, "Hannah means well, but she's just not like Emily. He's kind of dumb, plain. She'll never be much." I froze. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure they'd hear me. I'd suspected for years that they favored Emily, but hearing it out loud, hearing them reduce me to nothing when I was working myself to the bone, cut deeper than I thought possible. I wanted to burst into the room and scream, but instead I just crept back to my room and shut the door. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the floor, swallowing the lump in my throat. Pretending it didn't hurt didn't make it any less real. The next morning I acted like nothing had happened. I smiled, made coffee, and asked how their evening had been. My mom didn't look up from her phone when she said, "Oh, by the way, we decided Emily's engagement party will be here at the house. It'll be perfect since you're already living here. You can help set everything up." I blinked at her. "Here? At my house?" My dad laughed like I'd made a joke. "Our house. You don't mind, right? It's for Emily. We want it to be special." I did mind. I minded a lot. But what was I supposed to say? They hadn't asked me, they'd told me. My opinion didn't matter. I forced myself to nod and muttered, "Sure." Inside though, something cracked. My parents thought I was dumb, plain, and useless. My sister was getting celebrated in my home while I was expected to sweep floors and set tables like I was hired help. I wanted to believe I could take the high road, ignore it, and let them have their party. But deep down, a voice was growing louder. It told me this wasn't fair, that maybe it was time I stopped pretending to be the quiet, invisible sister they thought I was. And as I looked at my mom's satisfied smile and my dad's proud nod, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end of it. It was only the beginning. The week leading up to the engagement party was chaos. But not for Emily. For her it was spa appointments, hair trials, and picking out dresses. For me it was scrubbing floors until my knees hurt, ironing tablecloths, and hauling boxes of decorations from the garage. My parents didn't ask, they assigned. "Hannah, wipe down the chairs. Hannah, polish the silverware. Hannah, make sure the backyard looks perfect." It was as if I'd been hired as the maid, except there was no paycheck at the end. Emily floated in one afternoon while I was bent over, taping strings of lights across the patio. She glanced at my work like she was checking for dust and smirked. "Don't make it too tacky, Hannah. Ryan has high standards." Then, as if she just remembered, she added, "By the way, maybe wear something simple to the party. Don't want you to look like you're trying too hard." She laughed at her own comment and pulled out her phone, already distracted by texts from her fiancé. Every suggestion I made was brushed aside. When I asked about having finger foods instead of a full dinner, my mom waved her hand. "That's not elegant. Emily deserves something nicer." When I mentioned a music playlist I'd already put together, my dad interrupted. "Your taste isn't really what people expect at an engagement party. Even down to the seating arrangements." When I pointed out the sun would hit one side of the table during dinner, they dismissed me with a sharp, "Don't worry about details you don't understand." I swallowed each insult like dry bread. At night when I lay in bed, my muscles ached from scrubbing, lifting, and organizing. But the ache inside me was worse. Every word, every look, every laugh at my expense made it clear. I wasn't family here. I was staff. Emily got to play the glowing bride-to-be, drifting in to approve flowers or taste cakes, while I was left with the dirty work that no one thanked me for. It wasn't just the work. It was the way they looked at me while I did it, like I was built for it. My mom would hand me another list of chores with a sigh, like she couldn't trust me to get it right without being micromanaged. My dad would grunt reminders about keeping things in order. And Emily? She never let me forget what I didn't have. No ring, no job worth bragging about, no one to take care of me. "You're lucky you have mom and dad," she'd say sweetly. though her eyes sparkled with cruelty. Otherwise, where would you even go? By the time the last set of lights was hung, the floors spotless and the tables arranged, resentment had rooted itself deep inside me. Every ignored opinion, every mocking remark, every task dumped on me had built a wall between us. I looked around the house I lived in, the house I worked to keep clean, and it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a stage built for Emily to shine while I swept the floorboards in the wings. I knew what they expected of me, to smile, to stay out of the way, and to make everything perfect for her big night. But as I folded napkins at the kitchen counter, my hands trembling from exhaustion, I realized something had shifted. They thought I would always play the quiet helper, the invisible sister. They thought wrong. The night of the party arrived and the house barely looked like the same place. White tents stretched across the backyard, tables sparkled with crystal glasses and trays of food covered the counters. Emily walked in wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly paycheck, her arm hooked around Ryan's. The crowd that followed seemed like an extension of them, well-dressed, confident, laughing like they belonged in a magazine spread. From the moment guests arrived, my role was set. Hannah, take their coats. Hannah, pass out the champagne. Hannah, clear those plates before they pile up. I moved from room to room balancing trays and glasses while the sound of clinking silverware and easy laughter surrounded me. Not a single person looked me in the eye. Some guests didn't even realize I wasn't hired staff. One man held out his empty glass without saying a word, waiting for me to refill it. Another asked if I'd been working for the family long. I swallowed hard and nodded, too tired to correct him. Emily was the center of it all. She floated from group to group, flashing her ring, telling the story of the proposal with practiced animation. Every time she raised her voice in mock surprise, everyone laughed right on cue. I stood at the edge of the crowd, balancing an empty tray invisible. It wasn't enough for her to be adored. She needed me diminished. Halfway through the evening, she spotted me carrying a tray of half-eaten appetizers. "Oh, don't ask Hannah about dating," she called out to the group around her. "Her love life's a disaster. Remember that guy who ghosted you after 2 weeks?" She smirked, tilting her head at me. "At least you try, though." The guests chuckled politely, eyes flicking toward me with a mix of pity and amusement. My cheeks burned, but I forced a stiff smile and slipped back toward the kitchen. Ryan stood nearby, watching it all unfold. Instead of stepping in or softening the moment, he smirked, the corners of his mouth twitching like he found the whole thing entertaining. He glanced at me once, briefly, then turned away as if I weren't even worth the energy of acknowledgement. His hand rested on Emily's back, his posture smug, like he had the prize and I wasn't even in the running. I caught my parents' reaction out of the corner of my eye. My mom laughed along with Emily's joke, shaking her head like it was all harmless fun. My dad leaned against the counter, grinning as if proud of his daughter's wit. Neither of them saw the way my shoulders stiffened or the way I gripped the tray hard enough to leave marks on my palms. They didn't see, or didn't care, that their laughter pressed me further into the shadows. As the night wore on, I kept moving, fetching, cleaning, pouring. The music pulsed, the toasts were made, the compliments showered over Emily like confetti. And there I was, darting between tables, making sure the machine kept running. Not a guest, not a sister, not even part of the family. Just hands clearing dishes and feet carrying trays. By the time the last toast ended, I realized I wasn't angry about the chores or the endless demands. What gutted me was how easily they all agreed on my place. How natural it was for them to laugh at me, ignore me, and let me vanish in the middle of my own house. For the first time, I understood that I was no longer just overlooked. I was erased. When the last car pulled away and the noise of laughter finally faded, I stayed behind in the kitchen stacking glasses and wiping crumbs from the counter. My body was heavy from hours of moving, but my mind wouldn't rest. The air felt different, quiet but sharp, like the night itself was holding its breath. I carried a bag of trash toward the back door and froze when I heard Emily's voice outside. She wasn't alone. The sharp click of her heels tapped against the patio stones as she leaned close to one of her friends. Her tone wasn't the sweet, polished version she had used all night. This was raw and cruel. "She's pathetic," Emily scoffed. "Honestly, Hannah will never amount to anything. At least she's good for cleaning up after me. She's useful for chores, nothing else." Her friend laughed nervously as though unsure if it was a joke. Emily's voice hardened. "I mean it. She's like furniture. Necessary but not important." The words sliced deeper than any of the jabs I'd endured earlier. I gripped the trash bag so tightly the plastic tore at the edges. They had laughed at me all night, But hearing her strip me down to less than human, reducing me to a tool, there was no mask left to hide behind. I pressed myself against the wall, my chest rising and falling in quick, shallow bursts. I thought I'd heard the worst of it, but then another voice drifted in, Ryan's. His tone was sharp, cutting through Emily's cruel smugness. "You need to stop bringing her up," he said. "Every time you talk about Hannah, it gets under my skin." Emily hissed back, her words low but fierce. "Why? She's nothing. Why should you even care what I say about her?" There was a pause, then Ryan's voice dropped, colder. "Because it wasn't nothing. Back in college, before I met you, I hooked up with her." The bag slipped from my hands, landing with a dull thud on the floor. My whole body froze as if the ground had disappeared beneath me. Emily's sharp intake of breath cut through the silence. "What did you just say?" Ryan sighed, irritated. "It was before us. One time. It didn't matter, so I never mentioned it. But if you keep running her down, I swear I'll." Emily's gasp turned into a choked laugh, high-pitched and broken. "You're telling me my fiancé slept with my sister and I had no idea?" Ryan's voice hardened. "It's irrelevant. You and I are what matter. Stop making everything about her." I staggered backward, pressing a hand to my mouth. Heat surged up my neck, shame and disbelief colliding in a storm that made it hard to breathe. Emily had no idea until now. And now she did, because of him. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My parents already saw me as the family disappointment, the extra weight they carried. Emily already paraded me around as her cautionary tale. And now this buried truth dragged out in the open. If it came out beyond this argument, the fallout would scorch everything. Emily's perfect image. Ryan's spotless charm. My parents' pride. The very ground I lived on. I crouched in the hallway, trembling, listening to Emily's muffled sobs and Ryan's sharp whispers. My heart pounded with a sickening realization. I wasn't just the unwanted daughter anymore. I was the secret that could ruin them all. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling, my mind running in endless circles. Every word I had overheard replayed louder than the last, each insult carving deeper into me. I couldn't shut it off, couldn't bury it the way I always had before. Images from my childhood crept in, uninvited. Emily opening boxes of brand new clothes while I sifted through her hand-me-downs. Emily's smile plastered across the refrigerator in honor roll photos, while mine never made it past a dusty drawer. The sting of my dad's voice when I asked about college funds. "We're saving for Emily. You'll figure something out." I had figured something out. Years of loans, part-time jobs that ate away my time, and nights spent studying until my eyes burned. All while Emily glided through life, every obstacle cleared out of her path by our parents' hands. I had told myself I was strong enough to live with it, that my worth didn't need their approval. But the truth was, their favoritism had shaped every corner of my life. I'd grown up in a house where my achievements weren't seen, where my failures were spotlighted, where my only role was to make space for Emily to shine. And now, after everything, Ryan, the final blow. The fact that he had been with me once before Emily, the fact that he'd hidden it, the fact that my sister now knew. It wasn't just a private shame. It was a weapon dangling over my head. My parents already thought so little of me. If Emily twisted this, she could crush me completely. The thought gnawed at me, kept me awake night after night. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus at work, couldn't pretend anymore. I saw Emily's smirk every time I closed my eyes. I heard my mother's dismissive laugh. I felt my father's careless shrug. And behind all of it was Ryan's smug expression at the party, the way he treated me like air, as if I were already erased. That was the moment I realized. Silence was the prison I'd been living in my entire life. They expected me to swallow everything, to carry the weight of their cruelty without making a sound. But if I stayed quiet now, I'd never escape. Emily would marry him, my parents would keep worshipping her, and I'd still be the shadow cleaning up after their celebrations. I couldn't let it happen. Not anymore. The decision took shape slowly, like a flame catching on dry wood. At first it flickered, weak and uncertain, but every memory of being sidelined fed it until it burned steady in my chest. This time I wouldn't let them write me off as plain, as useless as the background. This time I would be seen. The wedding was coming. The perfect stage, the perfect moment. Emily's dream day. The day my parents had been waiting for. And I would be there, holding the truth sharp and ready. I didn't know how the fallout would look. I didn't know if I'd lose everything in the process. But one thing became clear through the sleepless nights and the ache in my chest. I would not let them bury me again. The secret they thought was dead and gone would rise, and when it did, it would take all of them down with it. The decision was made, but decisions meant nothing without action. I knew I couldn't storm into the wedding with nothing but words. They'd laugh, call me jealous, and bury me deeper. If I was going to do this, I needed proof, solid, undeniable, the kind that couldn't be twisted or ignored. That's where Mark came in. Ryan's cousin. He wasn't close to Emily, not really close to Ryan either. I remembered him from the party, standing off to the side, watching the spectacle with narrowed eyes. While everyone else adored Emily, he looked tired. Like he'd seen enough of her perfection to know it was hollow. I found him at a coffee shop near downtown, casual enough to seem accidental. We talked, careful at first, then freer as I let him see just enough of my bitterness. To my surprise, he didn't defend Emily. He rolled his eyes at her name, muttering something about how she treated waiters like garbage and never remembered his birthday. A small thing, but it told me everything I needed. Trust was delicate, so I didn't rush. I listened more than I spoke, let him vent about Ryan's arrogance and the family's blind spots. Fully he leaned in. That was when he mentioned the bachelor party group chat, his phone buzzing on the table with one of Ryan's messages. I caught a glimpse. Nicknames, crude jokes, hints of things men shouldn't brag about if they wanted to be faithful. My pulse quickened. This was it. I asked to see more, careful not to sound desperate. He hesitated, then sighed, unlocking the screen and sliding it across the table. Message after message scrolled before me. Ryan talking about women at bars, drunken nights that didn't line up with Emily's version of events, money he owed from bets he never admitted to. It was all there, his charm stripped bare, his recklessness exposed in his own words. I took screenshots with trembling fingers, storing each one like gold. This wasn't gossip. This was evidence. The kind that couldn't be laughed away. But I needed more. Words could still be spun, brushed off as just talk. What couldn't be denied was what had happened between him and me. I went digging through an old box tucked in the back of my closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. Inside were scattered memories of college. Wrinkled flyers, old notebooks, photos I hadn't had the heart to throw away. And there was a picture, faded at the edges but sharp enough where it mattered. Ryan and I, together at a college party. His arms slung around my shoulders, both of us smiling, red plastic cups in hand. Proof that our paths had crossed in the way he had admitted. Proof that his history with me wasn't some fantasy I invented. Holding that photo sent a jolt through me. It was more than paper. It was a weapon. Piece by piece I built my arsenal. The messages, the photo, the details that no one could deny once laid out in front of them. I didn't flaunt what I had, didn't drop hints. I stayed quiet, moving through the days as if nothing had changed. To them I was still the same shadow sweeping corners and nodding at orders. But inside I was steady. Waiting. Calculating. The moment would come, and when it did I would be ready. The wedding would be their triumph. And it would be the stage where I finally spoke. The morning of the wedding carried a kind of stillness that didn't reach me. Inside, a fire smoldered low and steady, but on the surface I moved without a ripple. No one saw the weight I carried beneath the calm expression I wore like armor. The house buzzed with preparation when I arrived. Florists rushed in with armfuls of roses, caterers unloaded trays, and every corner felt like it belonged to someone else's happiness. My parents spotted me the second I walked in. "Grab those boxes," my mother ordered, not even bothering with hello. "The bridesmaids' dresses need to be steamed before the photographer gets here." I carried them one by one, my arms straining as I balanced the delicate fabric that wasn't mine to wear. "Don't just stand there, Hannah," my father barked next. "Help the ushers bring in the chairs. They need to be lined perfectly. No gaps." So I hauled chairs across the lawn, the heels of my shoes sinking into the grass, the sun pressing heavy against my skin. Every task piled on without pause. Flowers in the entryway, water pitchers filled, guests directed toward the right rooms. I moved through it silently, my face smooth, my voice even, each command met without protest. Emily drifted through the chaos like royalty, attendants hovering around her, makeup artists fussing with every detail. She caught sight of me wiping sweat from my forehead and let out a laugh sharp enough to cut. "Finally being useful, huh?" she said, her tone sweetened with mock gratitude. "At least you're good for something today." Her friends giggled, their eyes flicking toward me before quickly turning back to her. I didn't answer. I simply adjusted the chairs, straightened the flowers, and kept my mouth closed. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was patience. Each slight rolled off me not because it didn't sting but because I wouldn't waste my energy on it now. Their words were dust against the fire burning inside me. I saved every ounce of strength for the moment I had chosen, the moment none of them could take back once it was spoken. Through the blur of movement, through the endless errands they tossed at me, I carried myself like a shadow at the edge of the stage. Not the center, not the star, but the one who could flip the lights off when the act was at its brightest. They thought I was there to serve, to sweep, to vanish behind their celebration. They thought wrong. And as I watched Emily adjust her veil in the mirror, smiling smugly at her reflection, I pressed my hands together to keep from trembling. Calm on the outside, burning underneath, I waited. The time was coming, and when it did, nothing would shine for her the way it did now. The ceremony passed in a blur I barely registered. Vows were exchanged, rings slid onto fingers, and applause filled the room. My focus stayed steady on what lay ahead. When the reception began, the air grew thick with cheer, glasses clinking, voices lifting in celebration. I slipped between tables quietly, unnoticed as usual, until the clatter of a spoon against glass called the room to attention. My father stood, clearing his throat. "And now," he said proudly, "Emily's sister will say a few words." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. For a moment I let the silence hang, the weight of expectation pressing down. Then I stepped forward, my hand wrapped loosely around my glass. My voice came out calm, steady. "Thank you," I began, "for letting me share something tonight." Emily beamed at me across the room, already imagining words of praise spilling from my mouth. I held her gaze and let the corner of my lips curl, not into a smile but something sharper. "I've been told tonight should be about kindness, about celebrating love. And I will. But I'll celebrate it with the truth." Murmurs rippled across the tables. Emily's smile faltered, confusion flickering in her eyes. I took a slow breath, keeping my tone even, almost gentle. "Ryan and I met long before he and Emily started dating. In college, actually. We spent a night together just once, but it happened. And I thought it was long forgotten. Until recently, when I was reminded." Gasps broke out. Chairs scraped as people leaned closer, whispers spreading like sparks through dry grass. Emily's face drained of color, her hand clutching the stem of her glass. Ryan shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening, a flush creeping up his neck. "I didn't plan to bring it up," I continued, still calm, still measured. "But tonight, with everyone here, it seems wrong to pretend it never happened. Especially because secrets have a way of surfacing eventually." I reached into my clutch and unfolded the photograph. The image, slightly faded, caught the light as I held it up. "This is from that night. Proof. Nothing more, nothing less." The silence that followed was deafening. Then voices erupted all at once, gasps colliding with whispers, hands flying to mouths in shock. Emily shoved her chair back with a screech, her eyes brimming with tears. "You're lying," she cried, though her trembling hands betrayed her. Ryan shot up, his voice sharp. "It was years ago, before us, it doesn't matter." But the way he avoided looking at the picture, the way his face betrayed guilt, told everyone more than his words ever could. I let their protests swirl around me, my expression calm, my glass still in my hand. "And maybe that's all it was, something from the past," I said, lowering the photo. "But some things never really end, do they?" My words landed soft but heavy, a suggestion left hanging in the air. All around the room, eyes darted toward Ryan, searching for cracks in his denial. Whispers turned into accusations, murmurs into outrage. Emily's sobs carried above it all as she bolted from the room, her veil snagging against a chair before tearing free. Ryan cursed under his breath, running a hand through his hair, his composure crumbling. The celebration dissolved into chaos. Guests standing, arguing, rushing after Emily, glaring at Ryan. The room that had glowed with laughter now shook with disorder. And at the center of it I stood steady, glass in hand, the truth finally spoken. The moment my sister disappeared from the reception hall, the room unraveled. Guests stood in clusters, their voices overlapping, some demanding answers, others whispering with wide eyes. The band stopped playing, the music cut short, leaving only the low roar of chaos. Emily stormed back in, her mascara streaked, her veil gone. She pointed at me with a trembling hand. "She's lying. She made it all up because she's jealous. Don't you see? She's always hated me." Her words cracked as they left her mouth, more desperation than confidence. Ryan's cousin Mark stepped forward before I could speak. He pulled his phone from his pocket and raised it high enough for people to see. "She's not lying," he said firmly. "Ryan's been playing both sides for years. I've got the messages, flirting with other women, bragging about nights out, even admitting he'd strayed." The room fell quiet again, then erupted louder than before. Ryan lunged toward Mark, trying to grab the phone, but Mark twisted away, his voice cutting through Ryan's protests. Don't act like it's not true. You left your words right here in writing. Ryan's family, seated together at a front table, rose to their feet. His mother pressed her hand to her chest, pale with shock, while his father's voice thundered across the hall. Is this what you've been doing behind all of our backs? Making a fool out of everyone here? Ryan's denials tangled on his tongue, every excuse tripping over the last. No one was buying it. Eyes that once shone with admiration now narrowed with disgust. The perfect image of the charming groom fractured under the weight of his own secrets. And Emily, my flawless, untouchable sister, stood in the middle of it all, exposed under the harsh light. Her sobs turned to shrieks, her fingers still aimed at me. She wanted to ruin me. She wanted this day destroyed because she can't stand that I'm happy. But the cracks were showing in her mask. Guests exchanged knowing looks, their whispers sharp. They'd heard her jokes, her cutting remarks, her smugness. They'd seen the way she basked in praise and brushed off kindness. Now those whispers turned against her. She's always been cruel. Look at the way she talks to people. Not as perfect as she pretends. My parents shoved through the crowd, their fury directed at me. My mother's voice rose high above the noise. How dare you? Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined your sister's life. My father's face burned red as he jabbed a finger toward me. You've embarrassed this family in front of everyone. Do you think this makes you better than her? Their anger hit like waves, but for the first time I didn't shrink back. Because behind them, guests weren't glaring at me. They were whispering words that kept me rooted in place. She's the victim. They've used her for years. No wonder she broke. It was a strange kind of silence I carried inside while the room boiled around me. My parents shouted, Emily wailed, Ryan stammered, Ryan's family seethed, but the tide had shifted. The golden child's shine dulled before everyone's eyes. She wasn't the adored star anymore. She was a girl revealed, shallow and cruel, standing in the wreckage of the image she had built. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't me they pitied. It was her. The days after the wedding were nothing but silence and broken phone calls. Words spread fast. There was no ceremony left to salvage, no reception photos to brag about. The engagement was over before the ink on the invitations had dried. Ryan's family cut ties, their anger burning hotter than Emily could ever spin away. His reputation, once polished and untouchable, collapsed under the weight of his own arrogance. Emily stayed locked in her room for weeks, curtains drawn tight, blinds shut. Her laughter, once loud enough to fill every corner of the house, vanished. Instead came shouting matches with my parents, slamming doors, muffled sobs. She tried to paint herself as the wronged one, insisting the spotlight had been stolen from her. But the cracks had widened. People had seen too much. No excuses could restore what she'd lost. My parents, though, weren't ready to let go of their version of the story. At first, they turned their anger toward me, sharp words echoing through the kitchen every morning. You humiliated this family, my mother hissed. Do you think anyone will ever forget what you did? My father wouldn't look at me without his jaw tightening, his silence carrying the weight of blame. But time has a way of shifting even the most stubborn hearts. They began to notice the details they'd ignored before. Emily's outbursts, her selfish demands, the way she twisted every story to keep herself blameless. My mother's voice, once fierce in her defense, faltered when she caught Emily lying to her face. My father's shoulders slumped when he overheard Emily ridiculing him to a friend on the phone. The loyalty they had clung to for years started to splinter. I didn't wait for them to admit it. I'd carried their judgment long enough. With what little I had saved, I packed my things into boxes, carried them out to the car and drove away from the house that had never felt like mine. Each mile I put between us lifted the weight that had bent me for years. My new apartment was small, the walls bare, but it was mine. No one told me where to stand, what to carry, or who I should be. I breathed in the quiet, letting it fill every corner of me. For the first time, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. Looking back, I knew I had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. I had torn apart the image my parents had built, shattered the pedestal my sister stood on, and burned the bridge between us all. But standing there in my own space, surrounded by my own choices, I didn't regret it. They had called me the dumb one, the plain one, the background no one noticed. Maybe in their eyes I was never enough, but I had been clever enough to see through the lies, strong enough to stop playing the role they wrote for me. I may have been the dumb one in their eyes, but I was smart enough to take my life back. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away, or should I have stayed and given them another chance? Let me know in the comments and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.